Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
What's up, everybody? Welcome in to the Legal Hands to the Face show with Bill Colarulo. After that absolute domination by the San Francisco 49ers over the Philadelphia Eagles. And we're going to talk about it all. We have a great show scheduled for tonight. There's a lot to unpack after that loss. The Shaq Leonard announcement, the Eagles have brought in a linebacker. We all saw that one coming with how the linebackers played yesterday afternoon in South Philadelphia. And we're going to be joined later tonight by Philadelphia Eagle Hall of Fame linebacker Seth Joiner. Can't wait to talk to Seth about what we saw the Philadelphia Eagles display at Lincoln Financial Field, especially on the defensive side of the ball last night. So Seth Joiner will be joining the show. But as always, guys, I appreciate you all here in the chat. We are simulcasting this Legal Hands to the Face show both on the JAKIB Sports Network as well as my YouTube, Bill Colarulo, and the Legal Hands to the Face Sports Talk channel. So make sure you're subscribed to both. Make sure you're following on all your social media platforms. We post daily content to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Threads, TikTok. We're everywhere. So make sure you're following. And if you're listening to the audio, we will upload the audio of this show to all the podcast platforms once the live show is completed. Leave us a review if you feel up to it. Helps us reach more Eagles fans. But let's get right into it, guys. I saw some of my crew at the Power Hour today at 10 o'clock. I also host the Philly Sports Power Hour right here on the JAKIB Sports Network. And I saw some of you guys there today. So some of you already heard how upset I was with that performance. And let me get this out of the way, because I know it is just one game. I know this Philadelphia Eagles team is still 10-2, and they do still control their own destiny to the top seed in the NFC. But what we saw on display last night was all of the things that we have been worried about, not just during the season, but in the offseason with that defense. And I'm not absolving the offense because we need to talk about them as well. But if you follow me, if you follow this show, if you were listening to this podcast during the offseason, I was not happy when the Philadelphia Eagles let TJ Edwards walk in free agency. I said it the moment they let TJ Edwards walk out the door and sign with the Chicago Bears. I was fine with them letting Kazir White walk. I thought he had an up and down season last year. But when they let TJ Edwards walk, who I think we completely underrated in this town last year, you're talking about a guy who played over 94% of the defensive snaps, who led your team in tackles, who was top 7 in the NFL in tackles. And you let him walk out the door, and he didn't sign a big money deal. You could have brought him back, but instead, we put all of our hopes into Nakobe Dean, who played 34 snaps before this season. And I said it all offseason. So this isn't just an overreaction to one game. I said all offseason, you cannot put all of your linebacker hopes on Nakobe Dean. But we know Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia Eagles organization does not value the linebacker position. And what you saw on Sunday was an organization in the San Francisco 49ers who do value the linebacker position. And they had Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw before he got thrown out of the game. And you saw what a good linebacker crew can do behind a dominant defensive line. Now, I know the Philadelphia Eagles signed Shaq Leonard, and let's hope and pray that Shaq Leonard is going to be our savior. But I wouldn't get our hopes up, guys. And I'm going to talk to Seth Joiner later in the show about this. But the Indianapolis Colts are a playoff team. They are fighting for a playoff spot. You don't just let a linebacker who's a four-time All-Pro walk out the door. They didn't trade him. They don't save any money by cutting him. They're still on the hook for his full contract. So why did they cut him? Why did they let him leave? Because he's not the same guy. I'm praying and hoping that he could just be some semblance of what he was in Indianapolis, because this linebacker crew needs it. You saw the San Francisco 49ers do exactly what we were worried they would. They completely exploited the middle of that field. And I know everybody wants to immediately jump to the defensive coordinator and the offensive coordinator, and we'll talk about the offense in a second. But while we're on the defense, everybody wants to immediately jump to fire Sean Desai. Sean Desai's not blitzing enough. Sean Desai needs to make adjustments. Sean Desai tried everything in that football game. But when your personnel isn't good enough, when your team isn't tackling, when your All-Pro and Pro Bowl corner aren't playing to their level of play, it doesn't matter what you do on defense from a scheme perspective. They tried running five-man fronts. They tried running four-man fronts. They tried nickel. They tried dime. It didn't matter. And we talked about it last night on the postgame show with Seth Joiner, and we'll talk to him shortly about it. But this Philadelphia Eagles defense, when they're in a five-man front, it is the only way that they have any shot to stop the run because of these linebackers. These linebackers have to play behind five down linemen so that they only have one gap responsibility. And it also allows those five down linemen to take on the blockers so that the offensive line can't get to the second level, and those linebackers should be able to fill the hole and make the stops. They couldn't even do that. But when they did go to a five-man front, it didn't take a genius offensive mind, and Kyle Shanahan is a good offensive-minded coach. But it didn't take a genius to say, okay, when they're in the five-man front, let's throw the football. Because now what happens is your corners have to be able to play man-to-man on those receivers. And the moment Brock Purdy put the ball into Deebo Samuel's hands, it didn't matter if there was a corner on him or not because they just couldn't tackle him. Deebo Samuel was targeted 4 times in that football game. He had 4 catches for 116 yards, 2 touchdowns, had another one on the ground as a rusher. This is a guy who's been talking trash for almost a year about your defense, about James Bradbury. And when he got the ball in his hands, they should be chomping at the bit to have an opportunity to tackle him. Didn't see it. Now, look, I did expect this Philadelphia Eagles team to have a hard time. And I'm not making excuses. We don't make excuses in Philadelphia like San Francisco did for almost a year. But you knew this was a tough spot. San Francisco was on 10 days rest. Eagles have played 3 games in about 13 days. They've played 2 really emotional games, winning the overtime game against Buffalo, winning that Monday night football game against Kansas City in Kansas City. You had no Zach Cunningham at linebacker. Your defensive tackles were banged up. So you did expect them to have a little bit of a tough game. And if they would have lost a close game, you would have given them the benefit of the doubt. But this was an absolute domination by the San Francisco 49ers. 42-19. They scored touchdowns on 6 straight drives. I saw a stat from Reuben Frank over at NBC Sports Philly that is the first time the Philadelphia Eagles have given up 6 straight touchdowns since 1966. Now, look, I asked this question last week. Is this defense a championship defense? And we talked about it on the show. I said everybody's worried about Brian Johnson. Everybody wants to talk about the play calling. And I see Fran Iardi in the chat talking about Brian Johnson. And we'll get there because the offense has their issues as well. But my level of concern about the offense is nowhere near where it is about the defense. And it's not about the coaching staff. I know everyone wants to blame the coaching staff. It's about the personnel. Outside of that defensive line, and the defensive line is stacked. Jalen Carter, Milton Williams, Jordan Davis, Fletcher Cox, Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, BG, even though he's playing a limited role, still can contribute to this team. But our back seven, the linebackers, the safeties, the corners, they're not good enough. And I am one of the biggest Howie Roseman fans out there. I give him credit whenever he deserves it, and he does deserve it a lot. But what you saw on Sunday, and it's not just one game, it's been all season long coming from that back seven on defense. This team now sits in the bottom of the NFL in yards against, passing yards against, red zone defense, third down defense, takeaways. This is not just one game. And I know we all want to remain positive, and I am still positive that this team is a good team and can correct these things going forward in certain situations. But I still feel that they lack the personnel in that back seven. And our corners better start playing like the Pro Bowler and the All-Pro that they were last season. And I'm not going to absolve the offense. We will talk about the offense. I want to get Seth Joiner on here, talk to him about that defense and talk to him about that offense because we've all had our complaints about the lack of commitment to the running game, especially early in these games. So with all that being said, let's bring in Philadelphia Eagles Hall of Fame linebacker, Seth Joiner. What's up, Seth? Welcome to the Legal Hands of the Face show, my man.
Well, Bill, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing all right. I'm still getting myself all worked up after last night.
Yeah, it's hard not to, man. Hard not to.
So I got to get it out of the way first because you've been all over today, all over Twitter, all over the radio about some of the comments that were made during our post-game show last night about that secondary. And basically, I think what you said is our quarterbacks are as disinterested at tackling someone as a young kid coming out to play football for the first time. And one of the players on that defense, Big Play Slay, retweeted it and had some issues with it. So what'd you mean about that when you said that on the post-game show? What did you see last night from that secondary?
Well, I mean, just an aggressive stance. Tackling to me is an attitude. And when the opposing team has the football and it's your job to stop them, it becomes a battle of wills. You either want that guy on the ground or you don't want him on the ground. And Deebo Samuel's caught 2 short balls and turned them both into 48-yard touchdowns. And those are huge plays in the game. There were so many missed tackles across the board, and particularly on the second and third level of the defense. When I watched this secondary tackle, it seems to me the only 2 guys that are willing to put some leather on somebody and tackle somebody and send a message to somebody, is Reed Blankenship, and the young kid, the young safety,
Sidney Brown.
Sidney Brown. Everybody else is looking to put a pad on a guy thinking that he's just going to fall down. Everybody is looking, to push a guy out of bounds instead of making them pay the price for catching the ball. And that's just not the way that great defenses play. That's not the mindset of great defenses. And yeah, listen, when you call somebody out, of course, they're going to be in their feelings about it. I get it. I get, Darius Slay wanting to fire back, but like I told him in my tweet, the eye in the sky doesn't lie. We've seen the missed tackles, and it wasn't just the secondary. Josh Morrow had more missed tackles by himself, probably, than anybody else in the secondary. But you're not going to succeed against teams that come in with an intensity level that the San Francisco 49ers brought to the link yesterday. You're not going to play against teams like that and succeed if you're not intent on getting the ball carriers on the ground. It's not enough to get there. It's not enough to put a shoulder pad on them. It's not enough to just wave your hand at them. Guys are only going to go down when you put the effort in to put the guys down on the ground. And I just didn't see enough of that in yesterday's game.
Let's keep it on the defensive side of the ball for a second. So who do you think shares the most responsibility here? Is it the coaching staff or is it the players for not executing for the way that defense came out and played last night?
Well, I think it's both. As a player, you have to have a certain amount of pride about yourself, in tackling to make sure that you get the guy down on the ground. The coaches can't do anything but take the chess pieces and put them in place to make plays. But if the players don't make the plays, even the most well thought out plans and game plans just don't work. I feel like Sean Desai, was at a quandary yesterday because there was a massive chess match that was going on between he and Kyle Shanahan all day yesterday. In the beginning of the game, the first two series, it seemed to me that Sean Desai, in the first quarter, Sean Desai, had all the right answers. They came out throwing the ball, San Francisco did. They threw it 3 times in the first series, punted. They came out the next series, they threw it twice and ran it once, punted. And then after that, in the third series forward, the next 6 series, they figured that, hey, we need to get this running game going. And once they got the running game going, it just opened up the rest of their offense. And the Eagles had no answer for it. The Eagles cannot stop the run in their 4-man front. They just can't. The linebackers aren't good enough. They don't understand the run fits enough. And sometimes, even the safeties, misfit sometimes. So then you're forced to go to your 5-man front in situations where you might not want to on first and second down because you just don't know. You know that you got to get the run game under control, but that extra guy in the front now puts you in a position where you're at a deficit on the back end. Now you only got 6 guys rather than 7 guys to cover with. So he was at a deficit all day long yesterday, trying to figure out personnel groupings and personnel matching according to what they were doing. And listen, Christian McCaffrey didn't have, a spectacular day. He had 17 carries for 93 yards and a touchdown, but he was successful enough in the run game to begin to allow the rest of the offense, to get going. He averaged 5.5 yards a carry, and when you're averaging that on first down, now you've got yourself in a situation where you can do what you want to on second down because that you're in a position where, on third down, you got third and manageable, you can convert. And boy, did they convert. For the last 2 weeks in a row, they've given up over 70% completion percentage on third down. Last week, they were 13 for 22. Yesterday, they were, I believe, 8 for 11 on third down. They just couldn't get off the field. And you can't operate that way when you're not making plays, you're not making the plays that's necessary to get off the field. You give them 3 more shots. And then you throw in, Josh Sweat lining up offside, which is questionable, and then jumping off sides. That just compounds an already spiraling out of control situation. So I think it's a combination of both. The players not executing and not tackling the way that they needed to. And then, the way that they kind of tied Sean Desai's hands as far as what he could and what he couldn't call to try to get the run game under control.
You mentioned the linebackers, said they're not good enough to stop the run when there's a four-man front.
Mm-hmm.
Well, big news coming out of Philadelphia today. A lot of fans are excited. He's going to be our hopes and our savior, Shaq Leonard. You and I talked about it on the postgame show last night. What's your thoughts on this move?
Well, I mean, just from an experience standpoint and a football knowledge standpoint, from a linebacker's perspective, you know, he's an upgrade. The question I have is, you know, how much does he have left in the tank? How healthy is he? Because teams don't let good players walk away. They don't cut a player that they owe $6 million guaranteed to at the midway point of the season. And then a player doesn't go to another team that has that same need, knowing that their greatest arch rival has the same need. Bring him in, work him out, give him a physical, and then you don't make him an offer that he can't refuse, knowing that you have more cap space, you know, than the opposing team. So while, you know, it might be an upgrade, my question is going to be, you know, is he the answer? Can he be the answer at linebacker that the Philadelphia Eagles need? Or is this just a Band-Aid that just temporarily fixes the problem? Or maybe he's not that great of an upgrade after all. I don't know. I can't say for certain. I just know that, you know, players, that teams don't let good players, productive players, get away.
We're talking to Philadelphia Eagles Hall of Famer Seth Joiner. Go ahead, hit that like button for us, guys. Hit that share button. And we talked about third down. 2 weeks in a row now, you said they can't get off the field on third down. Really, it's been all season they haven't been able to get off the field on third down. They are now the worst third down defense in the NFL. As a guy who played a lot of years in this league, what goes into it on defense to get off the field on third down?
Well, the most important down is first down, because if you don't win first down, now you put them in a situation where, you know, they've got options on second down. And if they got third and manageable, the likelihood that they're going to convert goes up exponentially. So you got to win first down. You got to get them behind the sticks on first down. And then, you know, hopefully put them in a passing situation where you can turn your pass rush loose and hopefully get a stop on second down. Now you got them in third and long. But I mean, I think a large portion of their third down conversions were something like 3rd and 7 or more, you know. So there's obviously, you know, some things that's going on, you know, as far as what the game plan is to try to get off the field on third down. But I think a lot of it too goes back to, you know, the mentality of how they want to play defense. They are hell-bent on not giving up big plays, over the top plays. So they're a bend but don't break style defense. And when you play that way, more times than not, in my opinion, I think you're going to give up more third downs, you know, than you convert. They're not a pressure team. So even when they get teams in third and long, they're not the type of team that's going to play their cornerbacks and their slot guys off the ball 5 yards and bring a blitz that can't be picked up because you have the numbers and force a short throw and make the tackle and get off the field, because the way that the Eagles secondary tackles doesn't necessarily lend itself to that being a certainty either. You know, if you're going to line up 10 yards off the guy and he only needs 5, well, and now you got to come up and you break down at 5. If you're not taking your shot because you're afraid of giving up the long run after the catch, the yak yards, then they're not only going to get the first down, but more likely than not, and you see it happen more times than not, they miss the tackle and the guy picks up the 5 yards plus 10 more before the safety can get over and make the stop.
Yeah, I think the stat against the 49ers was over 200 yards after catch, which is just unacceptable, man. But look, we're talking about the pass defense a little bit. Let's talk about that rush defense, because they still rank pretty high when you look at the overall numbers as far as rushing defense. And a lot of that is because of what we saw the first 9 games of the year. They averaged about 65 yards against, which was great. But then you look at the last 3 weeks, Kansas City Chiefs, Buffalo Bills, and now the San Francisco 49ers. have all rushed for well over 150 yards. They're giving up an average of 162 over the last 3 weeks. Now, I know Josh Allen accounted for a lot of those rushing yards against the Buffalo Bills, but this Eagles defense has now struggled 3 straight games against the run. Is that something you're concerned about going forward?
Well, it has to be a concern because, you're not making, when you're playing the run very well, what you're doing is you're forcing your opponent to be one-dimensional, because when they can't run the ball and they know they can't run the ball and you know that they can't run the ball, now you can get them into predictable situations, on second and third down. But when you can't control the run game, and they don't have to rush for a whole bunch of yards, they've just got to have some success running the football, enough to make defenses play honest, enough to make coordinators worry, and enough to be able to get enough on first or second down to be in a predictive situation as far as when they get to third down. I just believe they need to be more aggressive. They need to get up and challenge people at the line of scrimmage. And, you see our cornerbacks at times, they do get up and press sometimes, but the thing that they don't do is they don't take their shot. They don't take their one jam at the line of scrimmage. It doesn't make sense to get up on a guy who's on the line of scrimmage and then open the gate and let him run by you. That makes no sense to me. You're not forcing him to go where you want him to go. He's going where he wants to go. And if he has the capability of going where he wants to go, then he can work his route for separation any way that he wants to. But I just think a more aggressive posture by the secondary in man coverage, and even disguising what you're doing to be in man, and play off and then roll up, once the quarterback gets in his cadence. So, he's gotten a false pre-snap read to be up and bump and give the illusion that you may be in man coverage and then bailing if you're in cover 3 or you're in some kind of zone. You got to be able to mix it up and play games with the mind of a quarterback, because if he can get a pre-snap read as to what you're doing, what you're in, what coverage, you possibly are playing, then that gives him a pre-snap read of knowing where he wants to go with the ball right now. And that's tough to defend.
And you look at those first 2 drives of the game yesterday. Eagles defense did a great job. 2 3-and-outs. Looked like Brock Purdy was getting a little bit nervous. What were they doing differently on those first 2 drives compared to the rest of the game?
I just think they were more aggressive. The pass rush, I think the defensive line got the sense that, they were going to come out and try to establish the run early. The pass rush was getting to Brock Purdy. I think Hassan Reddick got a sack real early in the game there, to kind of put him behind the sticks a little bit, which they needed to do. And, they just played, in my opinion, from a more aggressive, standpoint. But then once San Francisco got the run game going, it took away whatever aggression they had. And that's the benefit of the run game, whether we're talking about the offense or the defense. It changes the way that you want to play the game. If a team is running the ball well on you, well, you got to honor that. When that quarterback sticks the ball out, you got to honor the fact that, he may hand it off. So if you're playing the run as a defensive lineman, you can't go, all out balls to the wall pass rush. You got to play what's in front of you, and you got to make sure you honor the fact that they may run the football. And then now you got to transfer into, pass rush mode. So I think those first 2 series, I think they ran the ball 5 times and they threw the ball 5 times, and then they ran it 1 time, and the Eagles did a good job of being aggressive and getting them off the field. But once they came back and they made the change, I think in the 3rd series, they ran the ball 4 times and they passed it for 7 times. So they gained 32 yards rushing and they gained 53 yards in the passing game. And then in the 4th series, they came back. It was a 10-play drive. They ran the ball 5 times and they passed the ball 5 times. They rushed the ball for 36 yards in that situation. and they passed the ball for 54 yards in that situation. When you have that kind of run the pass balance, and you're successful in the run game, then you can begin to see how your offensive coordination begins to fall into place, and now you can begin to convert some third down situations, and you can really affect defensively the mindset of players and coordinators alike.
And you said it when we were watching the game yesterday. As soon as the 49ers were able to establish that run, we knew the Eagles defense was in trouble.
Yeah. And they just, again, it was such a chess match going on from a personnel standpoint. Someone tweeted me today that every time that San Francisco got in 11 personnel, as one back and one tight end, the Eagles went to their 4-man line. Well, they were still running the ball out of that situation. And when they got into, their 12 and 21 personnel, they basically went 5-man anticipating, a run scenario. So, I mean, you could just see right there, if those numbers and those stats hold true, you can see the chess match that was going on between Kyle Shanahan and how he was deploying his personnel opposed to how Sean Desai was trying to combat that.
I want to talk to you about the offense, but before we do, let's stay with this defense for 1 second. So, no Zach Cunningham yesterday. No Shaq Leonard, obviously. He gets signed today. Let's be a little positive here. Do you think this Philadelphia Eagles defense can get it right and be a championship caliber defense for this city this year?
Well, listen, Bill, the sky's not falling now. I know that there are some people out there that, kind of get that sense the way that the Eagles lost that game, that now all of a sudden, the sky is falling. Everything that they want to do and everything that they want to achieve is still right there in front of them. They hold their destiny in their own hands. I believe that they needed to win one or two of these games to be right where they needed to be. You don't ever want to lose one, but if you had to lose one, then, hey, you got to win the other one. So I think that they can right the ship. They've certainly proven throughout the year that when they needed to step up and make plays, they could make plays. When they needed a bounce back game, they could bounce back. The issue is yesterday, once the 49ers scored back-to-back touchdowns, you don't want to say the game was over, but for all intents and purposes, the table was set. And it was going to be an uphill battle for the Eagles to kind of pull themselves out of the hole that they were in, because the two drives that they had, 12-play drives to start the game, they wound up just getting field goals instead of touchdowns. It would have been more of a game if they could have converted those. And then if San Francisco comes back, on series 3 and 4, score touchdowns, at least you're back to 0-0, 14-14 again. And now it's game on. But the minute they scored the first touchdown and went up by a point, and then they followed the next series with another touchdown, I knew they were in trouble right then and there. But everything is right there in front of them. I mean, there's no need to panic. They've got enough good players, and I think this coaching staff is good enough, and they've got enough leaders, guys who've been there and done that and been in these types of situations before, that they can right the ship.
And if they're going to right the ship and get to a Super Bowl, most likely they're going to have to beat this 49ers team. Mm-hmm. How do you stop that 49ers offense? What do you have to do from a defensive perspective?
I just believe that my pregame take, will always be my take. This 49ers defense, Christian McCaffrey is the linchpin. If they can get the run game going, and then they can mix Debo in, with some of that jet motion and some of those swing passes and things like that. If they can get that kind of stuff going, you're going to have a hard day against them. Your intent has got to be to get that run game under control early, send the message early. And then you need your offense on the other side, at the other side of the equation, to put points on the board. You can't settle for threes against a team like this, because the statistics bear out. Brock Purdy is a much better quarterback when his football team is actually leading in a game opposed to when they're losing. His completion percentage is 71%. He's got 8 touchdowns. That's going into yesterday. He's got 8 touchdowns against 0 interceptions and 120.7, quarterback rating. But when they're losing, those numbers drop precipitously. He's 63% completion. He is only has 2 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, and his quarterback rating drops to 82. This team, I said it yesterday, this team to me is a front-running team. If you let them get going, they're tough to handle on both sides of the ball because the defense is the same way. They really thrive when they have you behind. And when they have you behind with that pass rush and fast linebackers and aggressive style, they just pour it on. So this is a football team. Now, the Eagles did a good job of, I guess you can call it a good job. I mean, I said yesterday that they needed to have, under 10 possessions in this game in order to be in it. But I didn't foresee San Francisco, ripping off 6 scoring drives in a row. But, you got to get them behind or you got to play them even, long enough to get to a point where you can make some plays to actually win this game because they're just that good.
You mentioned the offense not being able to convert on their first 2 drives. They've been actually really good in the red zone, so it was a surprise that they went 0 for 2 to start. And you look at the offensive categories, they're in the top of the league in a lot of categories when you look at the final numbers. But one thing I've been frustrated about, I know you've been frustrated about, is that they just will not commit to giving DeAndre Swift carries for halves at a time. Why do you think Brian Johnson and Nick Sirianni, because he's an offensive coach, will not give the ball to DeAndre Swift more than they do?
Well, listen, first of all, I don't think it's really their philosophy that the run game is, how they want to win football games. Jeffrey Lurie has said in the past that he believes that a high-powered offense with a franchise quarterback, is the way that you win, and passing the football is how you win games in the National Football League. That sounds good in theory, but when the rubber meets the road, you're seeing more successful teams be more balanced than they are pass heavy. San Francisco 49ers, they tried that yesterday, and it didn't work the first 2 series. They had the wherewithal to say, okay, let's adjust. Let's go back to the run game. Let's try to get that established, and then we can run our offense off the run game. The Eagles don't operate that way. The Eagles believe that anything that they want to do off of in their offense will come off the passing game. They believe that their wide receivers are just that good that they can win all the time, and sometimes, you have to, like, when you're calling plays and you're coordinating defenses and offenses, you have to be flexible at all times. You have to be flexible from play to play, from series to series, to quarter. You just have to be, because if something isn't working, you can't just keep bumping your head against the wall doing the same thing, expecting a different result. We all know, what the meaning of that is. So you got to be flexible enough to say, okay, this isn't working, let's go to this, but the Eagles won't do that because they got 2 of the best wide receivers in the National Football League. And they believe that those guys can get separation, that they can win more times than not. And they did the first 2 series of the game. But whatever adjustment it was that San Francisco made defensively the rest of the way, they weren't willing to say, okay, even though we didn't have success running the ball, we're at least going to still continue to commit to running the football until it works. Because as low as the per average run is, and I think they average something like 2.2 yards per carry, all it takes is one 20-yard, 125-yard run to push that number up to a respectable number. But when they don't have success early, they abandon the run. And I think it's one of the biggest mistakes that an offense can ever do is put themselves in a situation where they make themselves one-dimensional rather than the defense making them one-dimensional because of how they call plays.
And we saw it against the Buffalo Bills. That one carry where DeAndre Swift took it for over 30 yards really sparked that whole offense for the second half. But I just don't get why they literally will go entire halves without getting Swift involved. But like you said, it's their philosophy. We know Jeffrey Lurie doesn't want to win that way. They don't believe that's how you win that way in the NFL. But look, let's look forward because, like you said, the sky is not falling. And this game against the 49ers, I did not think was a must-win. But now that they've lost that game, Sunday night in Dallas, is this a must-win game for the Philadelphia Eagles?
Yes. It's a must-win game for them because it has ramifications across the board. It has NFC East divisional ramifications. It has, conference ramifications as far as the number one seed is concerned. The Eagles hold a one-game lead, over both the 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys right now. If they beat the Cowboys, in my opinion, they all but sew up home field advantage, and they all but sew up the division with 2 division wins against them. They're not going to lose to the Giants down the stretch. And the Cowboys still, have some tough games on their schedule, which they'll probably lose 1 or 2 of those games. They'll be in a prime position, to lock up the division. But San Francisco is a team that may not lose another game, and if that's the case, as a common opponent, if they wind up tied, San Francisco is going to get the tiebreaker because they beat them in the regular season. So this is a must-win game for them. If they lose it, all of a sudden they're tied in the division, they're tied in the conference, and now it's game on to the finish line.
And we'll continue to break down that game all week. We'll talk about it on the pregame, but I want to get an early prediction from you. Do you think the Philadelphia Eagles go into Dallas and knock off them boys?
Well, the Cowboys have won 14 home games in a row. At some point in time, that streak has to be broken. No better time to break it than Sunday night. The other thing is the Philadelphia Eagles very, very rarely, if ever, I think it's been 20-something games since they lost back-to-back games, and they very rarely follow up a bad outing with another bad outing. So I expect for them the focus to be laser this week. I expect for the preparation to be heightened this week. They are truly in playoff mode, in week 14, if you can believe that or not. That's where they are, and that has to be their approach. That every game from this point forward is a playoff game if they want to have the NFC Championship and all the playoff games, the divisional round and the NFC Championship and the number one seed be here in Philadelphia. It's just a must, So and I believe that they will rise to the occasion. I just do, because they've shown it, time over time, time and time again, I should say. They've shown that they have a way of bouncing back when things don't go well the following week.
All right, one last question for you, Seth. So Shaq Leonard got signed today. Nick Sirianni was asked at his press conference, will he be ready for the Cowboys game? Being a guy who's played linebacker in this league, how difficult would it be for Shaq Leonard to be able to play on Sunday against the Cowboys?
Well, I mean, it all depends on, how much of the defense he can absorb, how much he already knows, what kind of similarities to what he's already run, how similar those concepts are. Do they have spot situations that you can put him in based upon, coverages that he already knows? I mean, there's only, everybody runs the same stuff, when you're talking about coverages. The difference is, what's your philosophy on how you play gap responsibilities against the run? What's your blitz situation? Will he understand, where he's supposed to go and who he's supposed to be covering in blitz situations? Then you get down to, the nitty gritty of it all. If he can absorb all of that, in short fashion, then I expect for him to play a significant amount. I mean, he's had 2 weeks of rest now since the Colts released him. So he should be chomping at the bit, refreshed and ready to go. It's just a matter of whether they can get him prepared and ready to actually step on the field and be effective. He's a veteran. He's an all-pro player. Has a history of being, a very good player. Veteran from the standpoint of he's going to, communicate and conversate, not only with the defensive line, but the other linebacker and the other secondary guys. There has to be that level of communication for him so that there's no question and no doubts in his mind as to where he's supposed to go and what he's supposed to do. Now, that's one thing to actually learn a defense on the fly. It's another one to then begin to prepare yourself for how the opponent is going to try to attack you and take what you learn and apply it in game. That's the conundrum for him more than anything else is, it might not be so much what he learns and how much of the defense he knows, but how much can he just store in his data bank and then be able to prepare through film work, game plan, and all those types of things, and then get in the game when the bullet's alive and be able to apply it, when everything's going 110 miles an hour.
And before I let you out the door, I got to ask you about a former teammate of yours. They released the finalists for the Hall of Fame this year, and Eric Allen is on it again. Is it about damn time that Eric Allen makes the NFL Hall of Fame?
It's way past due. It's way past due. I've watched some guys that played in his era, guys that played after his era, with similar to lesser numbers get in before him. And it is absolutely a travesty, in my opinion, that a guy with the type of numbers that he has, with the Pro Bowl cachet that he has, that he's had to wait this long to get into the Hall of Fame. I do believe, and I'm praying for him, that this is the year that it actually happens, because he is one of the great guys, one of the greatest teammates that I've ever had, and there's no one that's more deserving to be in the Hall of Fame that I can think of than Eric Allen. It's long, way past overdue.
Yeah, and what was it like playing on that team, Seth? Eric Allen, Reggie White, you, Jerome Brown, Clyde Simmons. What was that defense like, man?
Well, listen, man, we had a bunch of dogs, and we were not only accountable to each other. When you sat in that film room on a Monday and watched the film, you didn't want to let your brother down. And we were a brotherhood. We were raised in the game that way, to know each other, to fight for each other. So I wasn't just fighting for my stats and fighting for myself on a Sunday. I was accountable and I was fighting for all 10 guys on that defense. And because that's the way we were raised in the game and that's the way we played the game, I think that's why on the defensive side of the ball, we had such success. We had a bunch of guys that were players. You could have taken any one of those guys on our team and put them on any other team in the National Football League at that time, and they would have been starters on that team and been productive on that team. That's how good that roster was. You can't say that about a lot of teams. There are a lot of teams that got players that just fit. They're place keepers. They're, placeholders. And then you got, the superstars on that team. But we had guys across the board that were just flat out ballers that could play anywhere, anytime for any team. And it was absolutely awesome, to be associated with those guys and play with those guys, and hunt with those guys the way that we did. Because we just believed deep down that we were the best thing out there, and we could dominate. And we played that way. We approached the game that way. We wasn't taking anything off anybody. We were going to make you feel us at all time. We were going to punish you. We were going to hurt you. And that was the mindset of all 11 guys that were on the field at any particular time.
And this city will always love you for it, man. Seth, I appreciate you making the time. I will see you on Sunday night down at the Ocean Casino for the Dallas Cowboys, man. Looking forward to it. You have a great week.
You got it. Let's get it.
Thanks, Seth. Man, Seth Joiner giving us a lot of time, a lot of knowledge. Always love talking to Seth Joiner. I get the luxury now of being able to watch the games in the green room down at the Ocean Casino with Seth Joiner. And let me tell you, the stuff you hear on here, it is even better watching it live with his analysis during those Eagles games. So it's been great watching every game down there with him. But guys, I appreciate you all here. If you loved Seth Joiner, hit that like button for us. Hit that share button for us. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, I want to talk a little bit about where the Eagles sit because the sky is not falling, like you heard from Seth Joiner. So we will be right back after this break. Stay tuned, guys.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
My name is Dr. Bruce Grossinger, and I'm the medical director of Philadelphia PRP and Stem Cell Institute. I'm reaching out to those who suffer from spine and joint pain. We use treatment methods that require no surgery, no scalpel, no drugs.
Running, walking, or whatever your desires are, Dr. Grossinger is where you need to come.
You can benefit from the same PRP and stem cell treatment as Wilbert Montgomery. Call us now at 610-222-5675.
Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At Malamut & Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
EAGLES, Eagles.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the Legal Hands to the Face show. Appreciate everybody being here. I know all of you enjoyed Seth Joiner joining the show a little earlier. We're going to take you all the way up to the 8 o'clock hour. Have a pretty good Monday night football game tonight. I say it's good because I like rooting for Dougie P and the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I got some fantasy football players going tonight, so we'll have my interest. But I always root for Dougie P. Dougie P will never, ever have to buy a beer in this town, even still, after delivering us that Super Bowl 52 championship. And I see a lot of people in the chat talking about another coach who helped deliver that Super Bowl and Lombardi trophy, Frank Reich. And I'd be shocked if Frank Reich doesn't join this staff in some capacity. We know Nick Sirianni holds him in high regard. We know he's been his mentor. But I wouldn't expect Frank Reich to come in here and take over play calling from Brian Johnson. I've said it on this show before. I said it last week. I do think we're a little bit harder on Brian Johnson than we should be. I don't love the game plans every week. I don't love the fact that Brian Johnson refuses to commit to the run. But I also don't think that we should be firing Brian Johnson. I think this offense does do a decent job. Now, every single week, I usually talk about 3 keys to every game that I think will dictate the game. We talked about it last week. I talked about it the week before. There are 3 keys to every game that I really think will dictate the winner. Now, the Philadelphia Eagles have been able to win a lot of games, even losing some of these areas, but we knew that wasn't sustainable. And it's red zone, third down, and takeaways. And this Philadelphia Eagles offense has been so damn good in the red zone prior to that San Francisco 49ers game. We've seen them rise up the rankings. They started off the season, they were in the bottom 20 in red zone offense, and they've been creeping higher and higher and higher. They got all the way up to number 5, converting 63% of the time before that 49ers game. 12 straight touchdowns in the red zone. But those first 2 drives killed the Philadelphia Eagles. We talked about it on the pregame. You heard Seth Joiner talk about it. That San Francisco 49ers team is a different team when they're playing from behind. And the Philadelphia Eagles needed to convert in the red zone on those 2 drives. 14-0 compared to 6-0 is a world of difference in the NFL, especially playing a team like the 49ers. And they couldn't convert. And I know we want to blame the coaches. All the time we want to blame the coaches. But one of those failed red zone trips, I'm putting on Jalen Hurts. And if you follow the show, you know I am one of the biggest Jalen Hurts fans out there. But you cannot afford to take that sack in that situation that Jalen Hurts took in the red zone. At that point, you knew they were going to have to settle for 3. You just knew it. But I see my man Wine Niners Wine. I saw you in the beginning of the show saying you couldn't make the power hour today. I appreciate you being here. And him saying 10-2, still the best record in the NFL. And they still do have the best record in the NFL. And they still do control their destiny to the number 1 seed. If the Philadelphia Eagles win out, won't be easy, but if they win out, they get the number 1 seed, home field advantage, and a bye. And it will start on Sunday night against the Dallas Cowboys. And I love that this game means a lot. Because in Philadelphia, we love Dallas week. Absolutely love it. But it's so much better when it actually means something. And we're going to preview that game shortly, and I want to get into it. But before we leave this 49ers game, Brian Johnson, and again, I am not one of these guys who thinks that Brian Johnson should be fired. I think he is doing a decent job. He can get better. No doubt about it. The game plans could be better. Some of the play calling could be better. But I do think they're doing a decent job on offense. They're still putting up a lot of points, a lot of yards. But what I don't like, and you heard me and Seth Joiner talk about it earlier, is the failure to commit to any sort of running game for extended periods of time. And I went and looked at all of their games. The only game where they really committed to the run was against the Minnesota Vikings. And they put up 175 yards with DeAndre Swift in that game. Had even more than that. Just DeAndre Swift put up $175. They gave him 28 carries in that game. 12 in the first half, 16 in the second half. You look at every other game, that would be 22 halves of football. In 12 of those 22 halves, so you're talking more than 50% of the time, they gave DeAndre Swift 6 or less carries in a half. Just completely forgetting about him. And you look at this 49ers game. I get it that the game got out of hand. But they only gave him 4 carries in the first half. You have to do a better job of committing to the run. And I said it on the pregame show right here on the JAKIB Sports Network that even if the running game isn't working, it's working. Simply by committing to the run, making the defense have to honor the running game means it's working. But when you drop back as many times as the Philadelphia Eagles drop back in that football game, it became easy for that 49ers defense. And I tweeted this out earlier today. I know a lot of people love to talk about we need the blitz, we need the blitz. You look at the final numbers from that 49ers game, the Eagles blitzed 35% of the time. The 49ers only blitzed 9%. Now, I get it. They were in prevent towards the end of that football game. But all they did is they came out and they played zone defense, zone coverage. And this is where I'm going to get on Brian Johnson. They did not have the proper game plan, the proper route designs in their passing game to beat the zone. They couldn't do it. I also didn't love that they tried to run a couple of stretch plays outside with DeAndre Swift. That defense was too fast. We saw what good linebackers look like with Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, how fast they are getting to the outside, getting to the edge. So I know Jason Kelce said it after the game. The coaches said it after the game. Oh, we need to run the ball better. Well, I didn't like the game plan going in, but I also didn't like that. How do you know you're not running the ball better if you don't give your running backs opportunities? First half, they gave DeAndre Swift 4 carries. I think they only gave the other running backs, Gainwell and Boston Scott, 2 or 3 carries total. You have to commit to the run. You have to be more balanced in this league. But the sky is not falling. And the Eagles do still control their own destiny. And you look at the other teams vying for the top spot in the NFC. A few weeks ago, there were 4 teams vying for that top spot with the Philadelphia Eagles. But I'm eliminating the Seattle Seahawks. They've now lost 2 games in a row. They're 6-6. They have no shot at catching the Eagles. So really, this is a 4-team race. You got the Philadelphia Eagles, the San Francisco 49ers, the Dallas Cowboys, and the Detroit Lions. All 3 of those other teams are 9-3. And you look at their remaining schedules. At first, it looked like the Detroit Lions probably had the easiest schedule, but I'm starting to think it may be the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers have Seattle this week at home. Then they go to Arizona. Their toughest game is at home against Baltimore in 3 weeks. Then they're at Washington and then home against the Rams. Now, I know that Rams game is a division game. The Seahawks game this Sunday is a division game. But both of those games are at home in Santa Clara. I see the 49ers, at best case scenario for the Philadelphia Eagles, losing 1 more game, which would put them at 13-4 on the season. And that's if they lose to the Baltimore Ravens. They could very easily win out and be 14-3, which means the Philadelphia Eagles can't afford to lose another game because they don't own the tiebreaker with the 49ers for that number 1 seed. And remember, no longer in the NFL do the 2 top seeds in a conference get buys. Only 1 team gets a bye because now 7 teams make the playoffs. NFL wanted 3 wild card games per conference. So you look at that 49ers team, it's going to be tight. We need the Ravens to beat the 49ers. The Lions are at Chicago, home against the Broncos, at Minnesota, at Dallas, home against the Vikings. I could see them losing 1, maybe 2 games. I don't think they win out. They almost lost to the New Orleans Saints. They lost to Green Bay on Thanksgiving. I don't see the Detroit Lions winning out. So I think the Philadelphia Eagles, as long as they keep winning, don't have to worry about the Lions. And then obviously the Dallas Cowboys. The Eagles can take care of the Cowboys by simply beating them on Sunday night. But that Seattle game the week after won't be easy going to Seattle. The Seattle Seahawks straight up against the Eagles. I think the Eagles beat them. But that is a back-to-back road game for the Eagles in Seattle. Anything could happen. It got moved to Monday Night Football. First time ever the NFL has flexed out to a Monday night game. But it starts this weekend, and I asked Seth Joiner this question about, is this a must-win for the Philadelphia Eagles? Because I did not think that San Francisco 49ers game was a must-win. I said it all week on my other show, the Philly Sports Power Hour. Said it all week. As much as I wanted the Philadelphia Eagles to win that game because of all of the whining and excuses that were made by the 49ers for almost a year, and as much as we hated the 49ers, it was not a must-win game by any stretch of the imagination for this Philadelphia Eagles team. They were bound to lose one of these games. I didn't like the way they lost. We've talked about it. I didn't like some of the things that happened on defense that have been a trend as of late. But they didn't need to win that game. But this week, on Sunday Night Football in Dallas, is a must-win. Because if the Philadelphia Eagles lose to the Dallas Cowboys, no longer will we be talking about, can the Philadelphia Eagles be the 1 seed? We're going to be talking about, let's hope the Philadelphia Eagles aren't the 5th seed. Because if the Eagles don't take care of business in the NFC East, the best spot they could finish would be number 5 as a wild card team. So we need this Philadelphia Eagles team to do something that's not easy. Which is beat Dallas for the 2nd straight time and do it in Dallas. Not an easy task. Dallas Cowboys are a decent team. And I want to just take a look forward at the Dallas Cowboys. And before we end tonight, guys, like we do every night, I'll give you a little Philadelphia Eagles trivia. And because we had Seth Joiner on the show, a little bit of a hint, Seth Joiner is involved in the trivia. But you look at this Dallas team. They got a good team. They have a good team. And I talked about it a few minutes ago. And I said every single week I like to look at 3 areas. 3rd down, red zone, and turnovers. And this Philadelphia Eagles team has not been good at all in the turnover department. They've gotten away with it 10 out of 12 times. They've gotten away with it. Turnovers weren't an issue against the 49ers, but they were a big issue in their other loss to the New York Jets. And I see people in the chat talking about they should have just beat the Jets, Crawley says. But you look at this Dallas team, Dallas has been very good in the turnover department. They are a +8 turnover differential. This season, the Philadelphia Eagles are a -2 turnover differential. It's amazing that a 10-2 football team could be a -2 turnover differential. They have to fix that. They have to flip that the remainder of this season. You are not going to win a lot of games in this league if you don't win the turnover battle, and it's amazing that they have so much this season. So turnovers, and we saw it. If you guys watched on Thursday night, the Dallas Cowboys hosted the Seattle Seahawks. And I thought that the Seattle Seahawks really exploited that Dallas Cowboys defense. We know how good Deron Bland is, set the record, actually beat Eric Allen, who we were talking about with Seth Joiner. But Eric Allen held the record, was tied for the NFL record for the most interceptions returned for a touchdown in a season. Well, Deron Bland passed him on Thanksgiving Day. We know this guy is a ball hawk, leads the league with 8 interceptions. But you saw the Seattle Seahawks also exploit him. He is susceptible to the double move. He's just like Trayvon Diggs was before he got hurt in Dallas. They're going to get a lot of interceptions, but you could also take advantage of them with the double move. And you saw A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith take advantage of him in the first matchup with the Cowboys. But you look at what Seattle did. Seattle put up 400 yards of offense against the Dallas Cowboys. They put up over 330 passing yards. To put that into perspective, the Seattle Seahawks all season had only done that 2 other times against the Washington Commanders, who have the 30th ranked defense, and against the Carolina Panthers, who are 1-11 and just fired Frank Reich. So this Philadelphia Eagles team can go into Dallas and win this football game. But they have to protect the football. Dallas is very good at winning the turnover battle. Then we talk about third down. Philadelphia Eagles offense has been good on third down. This is why I say I'm not as concerned about Brian Johnson. And I know some of you came at me in the chat saying that. But you look at third down, Philadelphia Eagles are number 3 in the NFL in third down offense. They convert close to 48% of the time. Dallas defense, been pretty good on third down. They're 11th in the league. Not magnificent, but not bad. So the advantage on third down, at least offense versus defense for the Eagles, would be the Philadelphia Eagles offense. But this is one area that has me concerned. You heard me talking to Seth about it. This Philadelphia Eagles defense is 32nd out of 32 teams on third down. And the Dallas Cowboys are slightly higher than the Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia Eagles are 47.9 on third down. Dallas is 48.5 on third down. They are the second best third down offense in the entire league. So that's something that needs to be fixed this week, because you have the 32nd defense on third down going up against the number 2 third down offense in the Dallas Cowboys. So Sean Desai and that defensive coaching staff better figure out how to get off the field on third down. Because good teams extend drives on offense on third down, and they get off the field on defense on third down. And then my third key to every game, in addition to turnovers and third down, is red zone. And you saw how important the red zone was yesterday against the San Francisco 49ers. Philadelphia Eagles go 2 of 4 for 50%. San Francisco goes 4 of 4 for 100%. Turned out to be a big difference in that football game. And you look at this Dallas offense, they haven't been that great in the red zone. Middle of the pack in the NFL. But there's been a theme here with this Eagles defense. Eagles are in the bottom of the NFL in red zone defense as well, hovering around 28 in the league. So just like they need to make sure their third down defense is good this week, they need to figure out their red zone defense this week as well. And you look at the Philadelphia Eagles offense, they were starting to make some traction in that department. We talked about it with Seth. 12 straight touchdowns in the red zone. We're up all the way to number 5. Well, after this week, they dropped a couple spots. But they're going up against the Dallas defense. For as good as they've been, Dallas's defense hasn't been that great in the red zone. They're about 23rd in the league. So I really think when you look at these two teams, both teams have good offenses. I think Dallas, at least on paper, has the better defense. But if you can win in those 3 areas, if the Eagles can win the turnover battle, can convert better on third down, get off the field on defense on third down, and score touchdowns instead of field goals in the red zone, you can dominate this game. Those 3 keys usually always dictate who wins a football game. And like Seth said, I do think the Eagles can get this right. I have my concerns. I have my concerns with the personnel on defense. I don't like that they ignored the linebacker position for so long. But I do think Zach Cunningham being out was a massive loss for that Philadelphia Eagles defense. You look at Nick Morrow, and you guys probably saw the stats that came out. I think he was targeted 8 times. There was about 6 catches, over 175 yards, 2 touchdowns. They took advantage of Nick Morrow. And you're seeing the reason, as well as Nick Morrow has played, because I think he has been a great surprise for this team with how well he's played. But you saw why the Chicago Bears let him walk. Chicago Bears let Nick Morrow walk, and they signed TJ Edwards. Think about that. Our starting linebacker last year was considered an upgrade for the Chicago Bears because they signed him and they let Nick Morrow walk. We signed Nick Morrow. That's why I was so angry that they didn't bring back TJ Edwards. And he's playing well again this season. But hopefully Zach Cunningham, who Howie Roseman picked up off the street in training camp, who has played really well, can get back from injury. That's the other big question mark, though, going into Dallas. Is Zach Cunningham going to be healthy in this game? We need him to be. And will Shaq Leonard be ready? And if so, what does he have left? But if these guys can really shore up that linebacker position, and Bradbury and Slay can play to the Pro Bowl caliber that we've seen in the past, and we've seen it at times this year. It hasn't been all bad from Slay and Bradbury. We've seen it at times. And if our safeties, Kevin Byard, who hasn't really impressed us since he's come over from Tennessee, he needs to be better, and so does Reed Blankenship. But we've seen these guys play at a higher caliber than what you're getting right now. So that's why I'm still holding out hope and confidence that this defense is going to be able to put it together. But we also knew coming into this season that a majority of the money on this salary cap, is on the offensive side of the football. So this offense needs to come out to hotter starts. You cannot do what you've done the last 3 games, which is put up 7 points against the Chiefs in the first half, 7 points against the Bills in the first half, and only 6 points against the San Francisco 49ers in the first half. You have to come out quicker against the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday night. And before we get into our Philadelphia Eagles trivia, I want to just take a look at the current odds for some categories. I don't know if you guys saw, but before the game against the 49ers, the odds-on favorite to win the MVP this season in the NFL was our starting quarterback, Jalen Hurts. Well, after Sunday night's game, if you haven't seen it, can you guess who is now the odds-on favorite to win the MVP in the NFL? And I see Crawley saying it's Dak. It is not Dak, Crawley. Dak is now tied with Jalen Hurts with the second best odds. But there's Nathan Hoffman and Wine Niners Wine. It is Mr. Irrelevant. Brock Purdy is now your odds-on favorite to win the MVP this season at plus 300. Then you have Dak and Hurts at plus 350, Tua at plus 700, and Lamar and Patrick Mahomes at plus 900. But Brock Purdy, I think you saw the formula to try to beat him those first 2 series of the game, getting pressure on him. But how sustainable is that for 60 minutes? It's not easy. You got to take away his first read, and you have to get pressure on him. But it's very difficult to do with that offense that they have there in San Francisco. A lot of playmakers, a lot of window dressing, a lot of misdirection, motions. A lot of the plays look the same. But we will see what happens there. And no surprise, in addition to the MVP odds getting updated, the Super Bowl odds were also updated. And not a surprise here after the San Francisco 49ers absolutely dominated Philadelphia Eagles. 49ers are now the odds-on favorite to win Super Bowl 58 at plus 310. And coming in at number 2, the Philadelphia Eagles at plus 550. Number 3, Miami and Kansas City tied at plus 700. And then Dallas and the Baltimore Ravens at plus 850. But this still is a very good Eagles team. There's a lot of playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. That's why you saw them able to overcome some of the deficiencies that we've seen the first few weeks. No, not really a few weeks. 13 weeks in the NFL. That's how they've been able to overcome it. They have so much talent on that offensive side of the ball. And we didn't really get into it tonight, guys, and we're running out of time, but I saw some of you talking about the offensive line did a good job against San Francisco. They did do a good job against San Francisco. I did not think that 49ers stacked defensive line was able to get pressure on Jalen Hurts. That wasn't pressure because of good coverage in the secondary. Offensive line did a great job. Lane Johnson did a great job against Nick Bosa. But that's why I still have confidence in this team. That offense is good enough. The question I have is on the defensive side of the ball. Do they have the personnel? Can these guys raise their level of play? Can Darius Slay and James Bradbury and Reed Blankenship and Kevin Byard raise their level of play? And do we have the answer at linebacker now with Shaq Leonard and Zach Cunningham coming back from injury? I don't question the defensive line. We know how deep the defensive line is. And I see Adam's exploits saying that someone claimed that the Eagles receivers were open. Maybe it shows on the All-22. I am waiting for the NFL to release the All-22 so I could take a look, because my gut tells me that when you look back at the All-22 that we're going to see a lot of receivers not open. I don't think the receivers were able to get open against the zone coverage that the San Francisco 49ers were running early in the game. Towards the end of the game, look, Jalen Hurts threw for almost 300 yards. Because the 49ers switched to a prevent defense, and the Eagles were pretty much able to do whatever they wanted. But when they were in that zone defense to start the game, I don't think they were open. I think that's why you saw Jalen Hurts drop back and then immediately get off of his spot, get out of the pocket, because there was no one open down the field. But I will take a look at the All-22. But, guys, before we get into our Philadelphia Eagles trivia, just a reminder to go ahead, hit that like button for me. Head over to all your favorite social media platforms. Give me a like, give me a follow, at Legal Hands to the Face, on Twitter, at Bill Colarulo. Make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, Bill Colarulo and Legal Hands to the Face Sports Talk. Make sure you're subscribed to the JAKIB Sports Network. And you can check me out every day, Monday through Friday, 10 to 11 on the Philly Sports Power Hour. Tomorrow, like we are joined every Tuesday, I will be joined by Eagles insider Dave Spadaro, get his opinions on what's going on with this Philadelphia Eagles team. Wednesdays on the Power Hour, Kayla Santiago always joins me. We talk some Eagles and we talk some Sixers. She does a great job covering the Sixers. And then on Thursday, we do our Thursdays with Farzy, and Mark Farzetta joins the show. So be sure to subscribe to the JAKIB Sports Network and check out the Philly Sports Power Hour. Also, this week, I will be hosting Sports Take with Rob Ellis right here on the JAKIB Sports Network, Tuesday and Wednesday, right after the Philly Sports Power Hour from 11 to 2. So working some overtime this week. You're getting a lot of Bill Colarulo. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but hit that like button if you're a fan. So let's get into the Philadelphia Eagles trivia real quick. I told you I had a little bit of a Seth Joiner spin on it since my man Seth joined the show tonight. But there are a handful of NFL players who are in the 2020 club, meaning they have 20 career interceptions, and 20 career sacks. But there are only 3 Philadelphia Eagles to ever accomplish that feat. Do you know what 3 Philadelphia Eagles are 2020 players? I gave you a hint on the one. Seth Joiner was on the show. So obviously Seth Joiner is a 2020 player, Philadelphia Eagles Hall of Famer with 24 career interceptions and 52 career sacks. Pretty incredible statistics. But can you give me the other 2 Philadelphia Eagles who are 2020 players? I'll give you guys a chance in the chat to see who can get this one right. And I don't know if you guys are going to be able to get this. And it's not Eric Allen. We did talk about Eric Allen today. You heard Seth Joiner say it's long overdue for Eric Allen to make the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's not the first person to say that. Everybody that I talked to who watched Eric Allen knows he should be in the Hall of Fame. And I heard some people saying in the chat that Deion Sanders said Eric Allen should have been before him. And there's the correct answer. Philly's own gives us a little B-Dawk. Surprised no one got that sooner. B-Dawk, of course, is a 2020 player. Thunderbird comes in with Brian Dawkins as well. B-Dawk, of course, is a 2020 player. And I'll give you a hint on the third. It was a teammate of Seth Joiner. Was a teammate of Seth Joiner. Not Jeremiah Trotter. Dominic guessing Jeremiah Trotter. God of Thunder throws out Concrete Charlie. Not Concrete Charlie either. Nobody's getting this one. Andre Woodard's not correct. Troy Vincent, not correct. One more hint. He was a linebacker who played with Seth Joiner for some of his career. There it is. William Galbraith gets it with Willie T. Willie T, baby. Also in the 2020 club. Willie T's played a lot of games for this organization. I just want to see if I can find that before I let you go. I'm looking through my stats here. For most games played at the linebacker position, you have Seth Joiner at number 5, Frank LeMaster at number 4, John Bunting at number 3, William Thomas at number 2, and number 1 was Concrete Charlie as far as most games played by a linebacker in a Philadelphia Eagles uniform. Great stuff, guys. Well, look, I appreciate all of you being here. Again, hit that like button, hit that share button. If you're listening on the audio of the podcast, make sure you are subscribed to the podcast. Leave us a review. Really helps us reach a lot more Eagles fans. And hope to see all of you on the Philly Sports Power Hour tomorrow, 10 o'clock. We'll be joined by Eagles insider Dave Spadaro. Thanks for spending this Monday night with me, guys. Really enjoyed it. And I saw Wine Niners Wine asking for a Dallas Sucks. So I'll give you a little Dallas Sucks. But as always, guys, go Birds.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.